How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bodacious Rant with Burn and Rye. Just want to say we're born in the USA, and tramps like us were ready to run all the time. So if you don't know what I'm talking about or know what those are referencing, easily one of the greatest rock stars of our history and whatnot. We were talking about the latest biopic, or music biopic to be specific, Springsteen, "Deliver Me from Nowhere," starring Jeremy is it Jeremy Allen? Yeah, Jeremy Allen White from like Shameless, The Bear, and Iron Claw. Jeremy Strong from Succession, The Big Short. He's in all kinds of stuff. Great actors. Stephen Graham, and kind of on the newcomer side, Odessa Young. And this is going to be a spoiler-free review, everyone. So for those of you, who hasn't seen it yet, we're not going to get too much into it. But if you have seen it and you did like the movie, or you just like me and Burn talking, feel free to give us that thumbs up to show your support, ring the bell for notifications, and of course subscribe, which again we appreciate you all for that. So yeah, this movie, like I said, Bruce Springsteen is definitely one of my favorite musicians, mostly because of Born in the USA, such a great anti-war song, and really captures what was going on at the time, like people returning from Vietnam, the decline of the working class in the U.S. So very heavy hitting song. So I don't think people really pay attention to it. They just listen to the Born in the USA part, which is like, you're not listening to the lyrics, man. And with a lot of with all the music biopics and stuff, a lot of these artists, they do struggle with certain vices, whether it be drugs, women, booze, whatever. But this one was a very interesting take on, he's not necessarily struggling with fame, but more about him trying to find his voice, like with things changing and writing a new album, and also kind of dealing with mental health. I don't want to get too much into it because that's going to get too much into it. But Jeremy Allen White is another, I think, really up and coming star. I know he's been famous for a while, especially with The Bear and Shameless, but he's really, I really like his energy with everything he's done. It's very raw, very organic. Like, you really get in. I really like his characters, especially, I think my favorite film with him so far is Iron Claw. I think that's definitely a stronger biopic than this one. Not that this one was bad. I just think for the message it was trying to deliver, it could have been better. But Bern, what did you think about this one? And actually, while you're spitting that out, last year we talked about this, Bern. I was going to ask you later, but let me get this out of my mind. We saw the Bob Dylan film. I can't think of it right now, that James Mangold did. I know you weren't the biggest fan of that one, and these are two different artists, but how did you feel about this one compared to that one? Just putting it out there.
I will say that that I do appreciate what these newer biopics are doing as opposed to what previous biopics did, where it felt like those movies from like years ago they were trying to capture like the entire artist's life and discography in one movie, and that's just too much to handle. And a lot of times you fall into the trap that the movies like Walk Hard sort of made fun of, where you're just kind of just blitzing through all these different periods, and you don't really get a sense of the person or the character, just sort of them as like a Wikipedia page. Essentially, you get the overall version of them, and there isn't really too much time to sort of settle in and see them at these different points in their life and what's going on in their heads. So with something like the Bob Dylan movie with Timothée Chalamet that came out last year, and this one, I do appreciate that they focus in on a certain moment in this artist's discography. With the Bob Dylan movie, it was definitely that transition from folk to electronic, I guess you could say. The changing of the times and of the sound that was going on, especially with folk music and with him in that transition. So I did appreciate that they leaned into that. And then here, I did like that they focused in on this moment in time where Bruce Springsteen is just like on the verge of becoming a superstar. He's pretty well known at this point, more famous than he's ever been. But the history has shown, Born in the USA, the album that really just shot him across the world, is the album that comes after when this movie takes place. So this is that moment of him, like right before he's gonna reach that superstardom that only a few rock stars ever get, and which made him the legend that he is today. Me personally, I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan of Bruce Springsteen, but whenever his music comes on, it's some that I appreciate, and obviously some that's just sort of like in the cultural American zeitgeist for obvious reasons because they're very catchy songs. So this is an album, and this is a moment in time that I'm not really familiar with, just because I'm not really familiar with him as an artist. So it was nice to sort of get that sort of peek into this moment here when he's writing the album. Like I think it's called Nebraska. If I'm correct about that, remembering that. But yeah, seeing him sort of wrestle with his past and also think about what's going to happen to him in the future, with the superstardom and everything. It's an interesting place to sort of look into a character and to look into an artist. It's just, I feel like the movie doesn't really live up to that premise all of the time. The elements are there for sure. I think we have really, really good performances from the two Jeremys. Jeremy Allen White here as Bruce Springsteen. I think he does a really good job in portraying that sort of tortured artist. He plays tortured artist really well. For anyone who's watched him on The Bear, his face is very readable, and there's a lot of moments in this movie where there's no dialogue and it's just the camera's like a few inches from his face and we're just reading him and his emotions, and it's all there, and it's a really, really good soulful performance. And Jeremy Strong here as his manager, John Landau, really, really good performance from these two guys. I think the performances across the board are really really good, and I think they elevate the sort of meandering script where, again, even though we're focusing in on a moment in time, it doesn't, for me at least, hit those emotional beats as strong as it should, and I feel like it's a disservice to the story because, as you mentioned, they're handling some pretty heavy topics here, and I feel like the execution felt a bit lacking from that. And when I see who the director is, Scott Cooper, I feel like that's sort of a little bit of a weakness of his, I'll say, where a lot of the times I don't feel really emotionally invested in a lot of his stories. I think the one that I like the most from him is the movie Hostels with Christian Bale, but the rest of them, they all sort of fall into that same line where I'm like, this premise is so good. I just wish the elements were just came together in a more engaging way, and it hurts for me to say that, but yeah, that's not to take anything away from the performances here. I thought they were all really good. It's just all those other things that you want for a movie to like hit you emotionally. It just left me feeling just kind of like disappointed in that sense. Where like, oh, I wanted to be moved in this moment, but it just kind of left me flat. I don't know if you felt the same way or not.
Well, first off, I really do like your analysis on Complete Unknown and how that was like the cultural change from going from folk music to electric and stuff like that. And that's almost kind of like what that's almost kind of how they try to do with Bruce Springsteen, where he's a big rock star, very, city bound guy, very homegrown kind of dude. But yeah, when he was writing his album Nebraska, it was definitely some heavy hitting stuff, very internal things coming out. And I think there are only a couple biopics that come to mind truly that really capture like the entire life story, specifically Ray and Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix, about Johnny Cash and Ray Charles. So yeah, I think it's not a bad idea for them to focus on points like I said. I know you last year with The Complete Unknown, you weren't the most thrilled with it. You thought it was basically like a giant concert thing. I felt the opposite. This one, I do agree with you. It's really strong performances. That was actually the best part. The two Jeremys really held this movie down. They both have their very stone face moments to each other, but at the same time, it was really their acting, like their dialogue and their chemistry together that, I was like, what, I do feel like this friendship and, working relationship together. And I think Stephen Graham as his dad, there were some good moments closer to the end, though. I feel like that really hit home for me. Yeah, I just feel like with the more, again, I don't want to spoil anything, but some of the things, the messages they were trying to really drive home, I just don't think it it did well enough to do that, especially through, like, yeah, we rely too much on Jeremy Allen White's performance. Like in his, like you said, we can read his face, we can really feel his emotions, but it's like sometimes that's a little too hard for, I feel like, the casual moviegoer to understand. So I think it could have been telegraphed a little bit more. Not that I want to dumb down the audience anymore, but that was my gut feeling on it. I still really liked it. Again, I'm still a rock and roll person at heart. So with all that being said, I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. If you like Bruce Springsteen, you like the actors, and if you just want a good kind of a good story about a character and almost like a period piece, I would say this is a fun one to watch. Definitely worth it. Not too long. I thought it was paced really well. Yeah, I just, maybe if you're on the fence about it, maybe just say like a $5 Tuesday or something. But I think this is definitely a decent biopic to watch regardless.
Yeah, I think if you're a Bruce Springsteen fan, and if you're a fan of that album in particular that the movie sort of like wraps around, I think you'll get a lot more out of this than I think the casual viewer would. I think I'm comfortable in saying that. I think the boomers are gonna love this one. Just to sort of just say, hey, that sometimes you just want to watch a like a really chill, low key movie about an artist that you really enjoy. But like I said, it does focus in on this moment in time. I think if you have sort of the surrounding history of Bruce Springsteen, I think you'll probably get a little bit more out of this than someone like me, who admittedly I'm a very casual fan of his. Just whatever was on the radio at the time. I will say this movie did make me want to sort of like dig into his discography a little bit more, and to really like listen to the songs that this movie sort of entails. But yeah, as a whole, I would say for me, again, this one just kind of left me wanting a little bit more emotionally out of it, and I'd be curious to hear how super fans of Bruce Springsteen walk away from this one. But for me, this one is going to be a 2 out of 5. Not a bad 2 out of 5, but in the way that this was decent. I think you'll enjoy it. I don't think there's anything outright bad about this movie at all. I think this is a pretty good watch. If you walk in, you'll say, yeah, that was a pretty cool time, and especially if you like musical biopics, you'll enjoy it. And if you're a Bruce Springsteen fan, for sure. But for me, it just didn't hit as much of the notes that I really wanted it to, because, like I said, all the ingredients were there. They didn't just come together all the way for me, but there were a lot of elements, like I said, the performances in particular. That's like, okay, that's some really, really good stuff there.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. It's funny because we were talking, and I thought some of the way they filmed it and then how it was directed, I thought Jeremy Allen White didn't really sing much of it, but Bernie did correct me, like, no, he actually did sing a good amount of it. That's just how good he sounded compared to Bruce Springsteen, given that they did use some of his vocals and stuff into it, but still, very well done. So, yeah, 3 out of 5 for me, 2 out of 5 for Bern. For those of you who did happen to watch it, already, feel free to let us know what you thought about it in the comments. Even if it's your favorite Bruce Springsteen song, I don't care. Throw it down there. But yeah, now we're getting closer to the holiday season. We're gonna start seeing some, really crazy movies like Avatar, Running Man, Predator, Badlands, but we're also going to start seeing some more like award films. So, join us with that. Oh my God, join us while we review those. So until next time, everyone, stay bodacious and keep on ranting for us.
Absolutely, everybody. Be good, be safe, and as always, we'll catch y'all on the next one.